Welcome to the Paul Smith College Adirondack Watershed Institute's Aquatic Invasive Species Spread Prevention Training. In this section, we're going to learn about watercraft inspection from the Assistant Director of AWI's Stewardship Program, Brett Wimsatt.
Hello everyone, this is Brett Wimsatt, the Assistant Director with the Stewardship Program here at the Adirondack Watershed Institute. In this presentation, we're going to be covering watercraft inspection, the hunt for aquatic invasive species. In this presentation, we're going to be covering what is watercraft inspection and clean, drain, dry, how to use your head while inspecting watercrafts, where to look for aquatic invasive species, an example of a watercraft inspection interaction, and going over how to refer watercrafts to decontamination. Okay, so as a reminder, the three pillars of our work are inspection, education, and decontamination. We are here right now to break apart the inspection process. That then begs the question, what is watercraft inspection? The goal of watercraft inspection is to locate and remove aquatic invasive species from watercrafts, trailers, and associated equipment while determining if the watercraft meets the clean, drain, dry standard. This is achieved through both a visual and tactile approach. Now let's recap what clean, drain, dry is one more time, as this is the foundation of your position. Clean refers to ensuring that the watercraft is clear and free of any organic material. This includes plants, animals, or sediment that may be harboring organisms missed by the trained eye. Drain refers to ensuring that all water-holding compartments in the watercraft are drained and have no standing water present. This includes the bilge area, live wells, ballast tanks, and other similar spaces. Dry refers to ensuring that all watercraft compartments and associated boating equipment are dry and have no dampness. This includes compartments like the live well, but also fishing gear, anchors, dock lines, and water sport gear. To help you remember how to properly inspect a watercraft, I'm going to show you how to use your head to perform an inspection. H stands for the hull and trailer, checking for attached plants and animals. E stands for the engine, checking for attached plants, animals, and standing water. A stands for the anchor, line, and other associated boating equipment that could have come in contact with the water or aquatic invasive species. D stands for drain and dry, ensuring that all internal and external spaces on the watercraft have no standing water or dampness. First up is H. When inspecting watercrafts and trailers for attached aquatic invasive species, you will be performing both a visual and tactile assessment. Though large plants like variable leaf milfoil can be easily noticed with the naked eye, juvenile zebra mussels can be nearly invisible in early life forms. By running your hand down discolored regions of the watercraft, you can commonly feel sandpaper-like abrasions on the hull, tipping you off to their presence. The four primary things you will be looking for are 1. Complete or fragmented vegetation to include roots, stems, seed pods, and tubers. 2. Adult mollusk populations in the form of visible shells. Sandpaper-like abrasions signifying immature mollusk populations. And 4. Any damp equipment or standing water, which signifies the possible presence of small-bodied aquatic invasive animals such as zebra mussels and spiny water flea. Okay, so we are still on H, which is the hull and trailer. Let's now look back at the anatomy diagram of a watercraft. I'm going to cover where you are most likely to find aquatic invasive species hitchhiking on this watercraft. However, what I don't want you to think is that these are the only places that you're going to find AIS on this boat. We have found AIS in nearly every part or place of a boat or trailer. So even though some locations are far more common than others, you should never discount the rest of the watercraft. With that said, out of these listed parts of a watercraft, the anchor locker, stern, propeller, lower unit, and the hull are the most common places to find AIS. These are locations that have the highest probability of coming in contact with the water, vegetation, small-bodied aquatic invasive animals, and sediment. And not only simply coming in contact, but in areas where they are more likely to become lodged or stuck in some manner. Next, we'll shift to the stern of the watercraft. Following the same logic as the previous slide, you can see here that the stern has far more places that are likely to harbor invasives. This is largely due to having more protruding objects from the hull and motor. For example, it is harder for a strand of Eurasian water milfoil to stick to the side of a watercraft as compared to being wrapped around the propeller or through wires on the transducer. With that said, the bilge pump through hull, the transom, lower unit, propeller, drain plug, transducer, and tie-down straps are all high probability places to find aquatic invasive species. And now onto the trailer, and this one is a doozy. Most stewards and boaters don't realize this at first, but the trailer is the piece of equipment that by far transports the most aquatic invasive species, and more specifically, aquatic invasive plants. Boat launches are commonly meccas for invasive species as boats are launched in a common spot day in and day out for many months of the year. Thus, if invasive species were introduced into that water body, they typically first establish a population in front of that launch. Therefore, when a boater backs their trailer into the launch, it is the equivalent of backing in a fresh roll of Velcro. With so many exposed parts and pieces, any submerged or floating AIS will easily become entangled on the trailer. Then, as the trailer is removed from the water, the stuck AIS receives a first-class ride to someone's driveway, or worse, another water body. All parts of the trailer to the left of the yellow line are extremely high probability places to find AIS. But once again, never discount the rest of the trailer and always perform a complete inspection. Now that we know that trailers are one of the highest risk areas to inspect, let's make sure that we get low for every inspection this year. An inspection is not considered complete until you have physically gone down to ground level with 3 or 4 points of contact on both sides of the watercraft and the stern. You need to inspect the bottom of the hull and backside of the trailer bunks, rollers, and other trailer components. Alrighty, on to E. This is the inspection of engines. Engines are at high risk for transporting AIS in 2 major ways. The first is by having attached AIS to the exterior of the engine, and more specifically the propeller and other parts of the drive system that sit below the water line when the watercraft is in the water. The second is the potential for standing water in the internal cooling system of the engine, where small-bodied aquatic invasive animals, such as zebra mussel veligers, could survive transport. For the exterior of the engine, AIS will most commonly be found wrapped around the propeller, the water intake vents, which are found centrally on the lower unit, the transom mounting hardware, which is where the outboard is mounted to the transom of the boat, and any exposed hoses or wires, as these are easy locations for floating vegetation to be trapped. Most outboards, IOs, inboards, and jet drives all utilize the water from the lake as means for keeping the engine cool. Each engine configuration has a system where when the engine is running, it begins to suck lake water into specific compartments that surround the engine block. This water doesn't just stay in here though, it is constantly cycling so that the water doesn't heat up along with the engine. Therefore, the full system looks like this. Water is pulled from the lake, travels around the engine block, and then is released through a port that varies by each engine type. The picture on the right shows the flow of water in an outboard engine. I have marked the flow of water with a blue highlighter and black arrows. The fact that these engines are constantly drawing in lake water while in operation provides the opportunity for AIS to be sucked into this system. When the engine is turned off and the watercraft is removed from the water, there is still trapped water in the engine that could be harboring spiny water fleas or zebra mussels. For outboard engines, it can be a little easier to check for standing water. Most boaters will be transporting their watercraft to the launch with the motor trimmed up or tilted to the upright position. This range of motion can be seen in these images. When a motor is tilted all the way up, water can remain trapped in the engine. When the motor is then trimmed down to its lowest position, any remaining water in the engine will flow out with the aid of gravity through the center of the propeller. When a boater with an outboard or IO stern drive engine arrives to the launch, or just retrieve their boat out of the water, remind the boater to trim their engine or outdrive all the way down to drain any remaining water. Due to the layout and configuration of an inboard engine, standing water cannot be inspected for in these engines. If the watercraft was in a high-risk water body recently, recommend the boat for decontamination. On jet drive watercrafts, you need to pay special attention to the intake grate on the bottom of the hull. This is where water is sucked into the hull by the impeller to provide thrust for forward movement. Due to the power of this suction, this is a magnet location for invasive plants to collect. You will also need to inspect the rear of the jet ski around the steering nozzle, as this has major moving parts that can easily collect vegetation. No different than outboards, IOs, and inboards, jet drives pull in lake water to cool the engine while operating. However, jet skis are unique in that there is another way to inspect for standing water. For starters, outboards, IOs, and inboards are never to be started out of the water unless hooked up to an external water source. This is to ensure that the engine does not overheat and the impeller is not damaged. However, jet skis don't follow this to a T. Per manufacturer guidelines, jet skis can be started out of the water for short periods of time without being connected to a water source. To check for standing water, the jet ski can be started on the trailer and ran for 10 seconds. Upon starting the engine, the boater will allow it to idle for 3 seconds, followed by lightly revving the throttle 4 to 5 times in the 4,000 RPM range. Any remaining water and debris will be expelled from the rear of the watercraft. If water was expelled from the jet ski, recommend the watercraft for decontamination. Now moving on to A, which is for anchors, dock lines, and other equipment associated with boating. First, we'll talk about anchors and dock lines. Anchors and their attached chain sections and ropes are commonly stored in the anchor locker in the bow of a boat, but depending on the model of watercraft, they can be stowed just about anywhere. Anchors are important to inspect due to what they are designed for. The primary usage of anchors for recreating watercrafts is to throw the anchor and line overboard to then anchor the boat in a fixed position while on the lake. The anchor digs into the bottom of the lake, and with the anchor line tied off to a boat cleat, will keep the watercraft from drifting from its current location. Anchors can be looked at as a purpose-built invasive species shovel. They are designed to dig into the weeds and sediment to hold the boat in place. Thus, when the anchor is brought back into the boat, it is commonly encased in mud, sand, and vegetation. Many boaters are good about rinsing off their anchor and chain before stowing, though not everyone follows this best practice. If you don't see an anchor present, you can simply ask the boater, "Have you used your anchor lately?" If they say yes, you can ask to take a quick look for AIS. If the anchor is wet, muddy, or has vegetation, the watercraft has failed inspection and can be referred to decon. Other equipment that can be inspected, if present, include transducers and speed sensors, which are electrical sensors on the transom of the watercraft and are shown in the top right picture. Trim tabs are a tool used to help watercrafts achieve a proper ride while at faster speeds. These are shown in the bottom right image. Paddles, oars, personal flotation devices, and water sport equipment such as water skis, tubes, and ropes can all be inspected for present aquatic invasive species. Shallow water anchors are a mechanical method for anchoring the watercraft in place. There are multiple variations of these, though in general, all models resemble the one in this image. By pressing a button on a controller, these anchoring arms drop off of the stern of the boat and go underwater until they hit the bottom, effectively anchoring or holding the boat in place. This system can only be used in water less than 12 or so feet deep. Similar to an actual anchor, the bottoms of these poles come in contact with mud and vegetation. Thus, this is an important place to inspect. Fishing equipment, whenever present, also needs to be inspected, looking for attached vegetation, shells, or spiny or fishhook water fleas. Though we don't expect you to be able to identify all types of fishing equipment, the primary equipment to look for are planer boards and downriggers, both pictured to the left, fishing poles, nets, and bait buckets. I'm going to go a little deeper on the trolling equipment, which are the planer boards and downriggers I just mentioned. This is particularly important for water bodies with spiny and fishhook water fleas, such as Lake Champlain. Spiny and fishhook water fleas, as you have recently learned, are a very small-bodied aquatic invasive animal that inhabit the open waters of infested lakes. They feed higher in the water column at night, so near the surface, and drop lower into deeper water during the day. This is exactly where most salmon and trout fishermen will be fishing. Fishermen commonly use a tool called downriggers to drop their lures to deeper depths, while they drive their boat at slow speeds, hoping for a fish to bite their lure. Downriggers, shown in the bottom left picture on the last slide, have a metal cable and heavy weight that is lowered to the desired depth. Take a look at the left image in this picture. You can see two downriggers on the back of the boat, and both have rods next to them. The weight, referred to as the cannonball, is dropped lower in the water column. The fishing line is clipped to the cable and the lure is towed behind. In this process, spiny and fishhook water flea can become tangled on the line. Pictured in the center are spiny water fleas hung up on a fishing line, and pictured to the right is actually myself holding a lure and fishing line covered in a ball of fishhook water fleas from Lake Champlain this past June. Whenever fishhook or spiny water fleas are found, or when a boat is retrieving from a water body with small-bodied aquatic invasive animals, a watercraft decontamination should always be recommended. Electric trolling motors are commonly installed on the bow or stern of bass boats, deep V multi-species fishing boats, canoes, kayaks, rowboats, and john boats. These motors provide an alternative form of movement for boats that can be more controllable and quieter for fishing applications. Much like the primary engine and the propeller on a watercraft, you need to thoroughly inspect this unit for entangled vegetation, primarily around the propeller, which is circled in both images. Okay, on to letter D of using your head during inspection. So to recap, we have already inspected the hull of the watercraft, the engine for both AIS on the exterior but also for standing water in the internal cooling system, and then inspected all the anchor lines and associated boating equipment. That brings us to D, which is making sure that the watercraft is drained and dry, meaning that there is no standing water or dampness. Standing water represents the potential for transporting viable AIS. When AIS sits out in the sun and dries out, that organism will die. However, if you take those same organisms and place them in a live well with a few inches of water remaining, that organism may survive for weeks at a time before being dumped into another water body. By ensuring that all spaces are drained and dry, we greatly reduce the potential of viable AIS being introduced into new water bodies. Many aquatic invasive plants only need to stay moist and remain a viable risk in transport for short periods of time, while many small-bodied aquatic invasive animals, such as spiny water fleas and zebra mussels, need standing water or a very saturated substrate or material to survive any extended period of time in transport. When inspecting the bilge, you are looking for standing water, dampness, and visible AIS. They can be checked by looking over the back of the transom or by asking the boater to remove their drain plug. If while inspecting a boat you see the drain plug is still in place, ask the boater to remove the drain plug to check for present water. This could either be a launching or retrieving boat. Then, after confirming, remind the boater to put the drain plug back in place if they are planning to launch, or leave it out to allow it to fully dry if the boat is now leaving the launch. Live wells and bait wells are very similar to the bilge. You are looking for standing water, dampness, and of course, still looking for visible AIS. You should never be the one to open or physically maneuver parts of someone else's watercraft. Always ask the boater to show you the anchor, remove the drain plug, or in this case, open the live well cover. This is both for liability reasons, but it is also ensuring that the boater is an active participant in the process. And with a little luck, they will learn a thing or two about AIS spread prevention and may opt to proactively perform clean, drain, dry measures before future boating adventures. If water was present, ask the boater to either pull the drain plug or use the internal pump to discharge this water. The DEC clean, drain, dry towels can then be used to dry this internal compartment. If the boat was coming from a high-risk water body with small-bodied aquatic invasive animals, recommend the boat for watercraft decontamination. For watercrafts with ballast tanks, which will most commonly be wakeboard or wake boats, ask the boater if they have used their ballast tanks recently. If yes, ask the boater to run the ballast tank discharge pump to ensure that all water has been fully removed. If water was indeed present, or if the watercraft was in a high-risk water body with small-bodied aquatic invasive animals last, recommend the watercraft for decontamination. Okay, so this diagram shows the general flow of how a steward will conduct an inspection on a watercraft. You will first start by inspecting at the front of the trailer. Either side is fine. The inspection is not complete until you have reached your starting point on the opposite side of the trailer. You will first start off with inspecting the trailer and work your way down the side of the watercraft, inspecting from the bow to stern, high to low, and inside to outside. And of course, this process will vary as each boat is a little different, such as inspecting this boat here versus a canoe or a jet ski. They don't all have the same parts and pieces, but the principle of inspecting a watercraft for being clean, drain, and dry does not change. In this scenario, and going in order of the numbers and tags, you will inspect 1. The trailer, 2. The electric trolling motor, 3. The hull, 4. Look inside for an anchor or fishing gear, 5 through 7. Continue to look under the trailer at all components. Inspect the wheels, tires, fenders, license plate, and lights. 8. Ask to see the live well. 9. Onto the stern of the boat, where we'll continue to inspect the trailer. 10. The bilge. 11. The engine, lower unit, and propeller. 12. The drain plug. And 13. The swim deck. This process will be continued on the opposite side of the watercraft and up to the trailer tongue where you started your inspection. So what does this process actually look like? In these next few slides, I'm going to read through a standard scenario of what an inspection may look like, hopefully painting a slightly more clear image of what your role as a steward looks like. It is a sunny July morning at Upper Saranac Lake when you see a truck and boat pulling into the parking lot. As the truck and boat nears, you stand up from your stewarding station, so this will be your table, chair, and canopy, and open the WISPA survey on your work tablet. You then begin filling in prompted fields that can be completed prior to engaging the boater, such as what type of boat it is, how many people, and what water body they're launching into. The driver pulls off to the side of the parking lot, gets out of the vehicle, and begins to unstrap the boat. At this time, you walk over to the boater and greet them. Hello, my name is Brett. I'm a Watercraft Inspection Steward with the Adirondack Watershed Institute. I'm here to inspect boats for aquatic invasive species. Are you familiar with our program? Continue to ask the survey questions such as what water body was the boat last in, and did you do anything to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species? Ask the boater if you have permission to inspect their boat for AIS. Upon receiving permission, start at the bow of the boat, following the diagram shown previously. Systematically work your way around the boat using your head to perform an inspection: hull and trailer, engine, anchor lines and equipment, drain and dry. You can ask the boater for assistance in the inspection process. This is a great way to teach the boater about how they can inspect their own boat when a steward is not on duty. If the boat is a fishing style watercraft and thus likely to have a live well, you can ask the boater, do you have a live well on your boat? May I take a look at it to confirm it's clean, drain, and dry? This also goes for the anchor, locker, bilge, and other spaces similar. Always have the boater open compartments and remove drain plugs, trim the motor, etc. for you. As you work to the stern of the watercraft, check to see that the drain plug is removed. If in place, ask the boater to remove it to see if water drains out. If water is present, recommend the boat for decon. If dry, remind the boater to put the drain plug back in before launching. On smaller open deck style boats, you can visually inspect the bilge area from looking over the transom. This particular boat has an outboard engine. Ask the boater to trim the engine down to confirm there is no standing water that drains out. If water is present, recommend the boat for decon. While performing the inspection, use this time as an opportunity to continue asking survey questions and to casually talk to the boater about ways they can practice clean, drain, dry at home. Continue to inspect the watercraft until you reach the starting point at the bow. While performing the inspection, remember to get low. If the watercraft passes the CDD standard, the boat has passed inspection and is clear. To receive a certification card, fill out a card, pass it off to the boater, and then inform them what to do with it. Complete and submit the WISPA survey. Remind the boater to clean, drain, dry each time they take their boat out and to have a great day on the water. As part of the education component to your job, it is important to talk to each boater about what they can do to minimize the spread of aquatic invasive species. Ultimately, all you need to do for this is talk to them about exactly what you're learning here today, and that all boils down to clean, drain, and dry. Though you will be there to help them in that process, it is also the boater's responsibility to inspect their own boat each time they go out on the water, performing an inspection for present organic matter, standing water, and dampness. Boaters can remove all organic material from their boat, motor, trailer, and gear. Even though hot water is recommended, you can inform boaters that cold water from a hose can still be used to help remove AIS from the boat. It won't kill the AIS, but at least they will be washed off. It is also important to talk about the need to properly drain and dry all compartments and gear. For example, you should recommend to boaters that they leave drain plugs pulled out well out of the water, hang dock lines and anchors after use, and leave live well lids open to air dry, all of which helps to ensure that compartments and gear are dry and AIS free. You can also refer boats to adkcleanboats.com for a complete list of inspection and decon sites in the Adirondack Park and the rest of New York State. For removing AIS from a watercraft, a few steps can be taken. First, we always want to ask if we have permission to inspect someone's watercraft, and if AIS are found, that we can remove them. Upon receiving the green light to do so, the first step is hand removal. This is most commonly completed when aquatic invasive species are present and they will not be rigidly affixed to the watercraft. Remove the vegetation as completely as possible, ensuring that no fragments are left behind. This also includes unaffixed mussels, clamshells, and seed pods, such as water chestnuts. In the event that you inspect a boat that has been invaded by zebra mussels or similar, first strongly urge that the watercraft goes to a decontamination site. For many of our inspection launches, a decon station is located right on site, making this recommendation more realistic and more agreeable to the boater. For decon procedures for this very scenario, Steward 2s will learn about this in the decon modules tomorrow. In the event that your inspection site does not have a decon station, recommend that the boater receives a decontamination at a nearby location. Most of our inspection-only sites are within 5 to 30 minutes of a decon station. Talk to the boater about why this is so important and why they should consider going to a decon station. For example, if they are launching into a water body that doesn't have zebra mussels and their boat is covered in them, you can direct them to adkcleanboats.com to receive online directions, or you can hand them a decon address card with a provided list to decon stations and addresses. If the boater is not willing to go to a decon station, the boater or yourself, if given permission, can use the hand scraper and brush shown in the picture to remove as much zebra mussel growth as possible. Use this putty knife at a shallow, near flush angle to the hull to work shells off of the boat. Any AIS that is removed from a watercraft can be placed in these nuisance invasive species disposal stations. These boxed-in frames have gravel bottoms, allowing for a safe place for AIS to dry out and die in the sun. Additionally, another responsibility of yours is to pick up washed-up AIS on the boat launch each day. If you see milfoil or curly-leaf pondweed, for instance, washed up at your launch, you can pick it up and place it in this disposal station. If your launch has particularly heavy growth and sees a large volume of vegetation on the launch daily, we will supply your location with a small rake to aid in your cleanup efforts. Though this is not the watercraft decontamination module, I want to provide a basic overview to what this process is so that when Steward 1s are referring boats to decon, they have a strong foundational understanding and can answer some of the common questions that boaters may have. So what is watercraft decontamination? The goal of watercraft decontamination is to kill and remove aquatic invasive species that are present on watercrafts, motors, trailers, and associated equipment. This is achieved through hand removal in hot water. So how is watercraft decontamination achieved? After AIS are removed from the watercraft by hand, we rely on hot water to kill any remaining aquatic invasive plants, and more specifically, small-bodied aquatic invasive animals such as zebra mussels and spiny water fleas. Watercraft decontamination primarily focuses on small-bodied aquatic invasive animals as they are far more difficult to successfully find, kill, and remove from a watercraft, whereas most invasive plants can easily be removed by hand in most cases. To decontaminate the exterior of the watercraft, such as the hull, motor, and trailer, we use a combination of high and low pressure hot water at 140 degrees Fahrenheit for an exposure duration of 10 seconds. To decontaminate internal compartments, such as the live well, bilge, or the motor, we use low pressure water at 120 degrees Fahrenheit for an exposure duration of 30 seconds. This is to compensate for more sensitive areas that have silicone gaskets and electrical components. These temperatures and durations were tested and proven to be effective at killing both juvenile and adult small-bodied aquatic invasive animals. It is also important to clarify that the decontamination process only uses hot water to kill invasives, and there are no chemicals or additives used in the water. Referring boats to decon is a huge step in the process as this holds the highest degree of certainty that the boat is indeed invasive free. Decon services are available to all that are interested, whether clean drain dry or not. The boats we need to pay special attention to are the boats that fail clean drain dry, which is about 1 to 4% of boats inspected each year. These are the boats we need to talk to and explain why it is so important that they get their boat decon before entering another water body. This also applies to boats that have been in high-risk water bodies in the last 2 weeks, such as Lake Champlain, Lake Ontario, Saratoga Lake, the Hudson River, Mohawk River, and many others. Even if a boat from a high-risk water body passes inspection, it is always good to recommend these boats for decon in case something was hidden or missed. We also offer what we refer to as courtesy washes. This is where we offer a decontamination to boats that have passed inspection. The goal of this is to give the boater an opportunity to try out the process and so they become more familiar and comfortable with it. Then, if they receive an inspection in the future and fail, they are now more likely to say yes to the decon as it was a pleasant prior experience. Okay, so we're getting a lot closer. How's everyone feeling? Do you think you're ready to go inspect a few boats? So at this point, we've now covered what are the parts of a boat, where AIS might be hiding, how to inspect a boat, how to remove AIS, how to refer a boat to decon. But what is your plan when these boats show up? Has your inspection game plan been rocked a little bit? Not entirely sure where to start or how to proceed? It's actually a bit more simple than you would think. Though I have attempted to make this entire process seem time-consuming and complicated, it really doesn't have to be, and I promise you will be proficient in this process within a week or so. Whatever you are inspecting, whether common or from the depths of someone's imagination, keep it simple, use your head, and make sure the watercraft is clean, drain, and dry. So when you see your first floating car, homemade kayak, or a duck boat with a 6-foot-long mud motor, know that your sole job is to find out if it's clean, drain, and dry. It doesn't matter what it looks like or how it got there. You just need to inspect it for organic matter and the presence of standing water or damp equipment. You've got this. Thank you all so much for tagging along as we discussed watercraft inspection, the hunt for aquatic invasive species.